Look at this asshole prancing around.
You see, the idea of games have changed over the years. And what I mean by that is that originally we started out playing on arcades. And so the idea of the arcade was really, oh, okay, so I died, right? Let me just go and buy more tokens so I can get revives and more lives. But now we have the ability to play at home. And so the whole idea of adding home consoles changed the entire landscape as we see games. And so basically over time, games have gotten to the point where now everyone has a video game. You can't really go anywhere without seeing a game. Mobile phones have games on them that count as video games as well. They're just a part of life at this point. And so I wanted to talk about the evolution of games, or rather, the evolution of the players and the developers. Because as time has gone on, that has changed drastically. Because originally, players and the developers used to have a nice, decent relationship, to the point where we revered them as like our heroes, as like pioneers in the industry. But now there's a stigma between both developers and gamers, to the point where I don't think the relationship between the two will ever be repaired. And it all started because of at first it was small things like DLC, which is downloadable content. And so basically what DLC is it's an add-on added into the game where basically it's literally just extra things for the game. And so a lot of players disagree with the idea of DLC because why was it in the game originally? Why are you charging me $5 to $20 for it? What's the purpose of having it? And so really, in all honesty, DLC is there to support the developer post-game. But of course, not a lot of people see that. They see it really more as a idea of, this is a cash grab. You want more of my money, even though I've paid you $60 to $100 for a game. And yes, I know that I said people paid $100 for a game, but that's because sometimes games come out with like special editions. And so I'm one of those people who also buy the special editions of video games, like Red Dead Redemption. I bought the special edition of that. That cost me $100. And so I wanted to do that because not only did I want the extra stuff, but I'm a huge fan of Rockstar Games and Red Dead. So I was willing to drop the $100 because not only do I support this game franchise, but I also support the developers of the game because I want them to continue to make things for that game. But really, besides that, it's more. It's because people see this. They see that there's a wall between the developers and the players. You see, devs over time have, I don't want to say they've become jerks, but devs have gotten to the point where they keep themselves on a pedestal away from the players. And it's like they treat us as if they're better than us just because they make the games themselves. So granted, true as that may be, because they do make the games and we do drop the $60 to pay for them, but at the same time, there's the respect between player and game and developer is not really there anymore. And so it's gotten to the point where players they'll dox a developer, or they'll hack the game. And what a dox is basically they leak the developer's personal information. Sure, yeah, we might already know the developer's name, but then they'll go and they'll leak their house, their address. And so over time, the relationship between the player and the developer is just it's slowly going away. Because at first, no one really paid much attention to DLC. It wasn't until they added the idea of microtransaction. And so basically what a microtransaction is that it's an add-on for a game where it can help a player who's not good at the game become like extremely good early on, to the point where it's not fair for the people who grinded the game early on and who dedicated time to it. So let's say, for example, you and I are playing Madden Ultimate Team, and I have basically built up my team from the ground up. I have like Hall of Famers on my team. Instead, let's say that you bought microtransactions. So let's say you put at least $100 into the game. You basically just bought yourself a super team off rip. You didn't have to basically go through and grind the game out, do all the challenges to get the brand new Hall of Fame players that come out. Basically, it's pay to win, and not a lot of people agree with that idea or concept of pay to win. So a lot of people basically they see it as gambling, because when you buy your cards, when you buy your packs, you don't know what's inside. You hope to get something good. It's always a what if. And so the pack odds, like, granted, some people who do grind end up eventually buying these microtransactions. But the problem is, you don't know what you're exactly getting. And so a lot of people take the gamble, and they're willing to drop like $100 to like $1,000 just to get one card. And so I'm not gonna lie, I've also done this myself when I was younger, but I realized I didn't have to do it if I just played the game long enough. And so basically, people started to see this as child gambling, because, mind you, a lot of gamers are kids, and they'll take their parents' cards and whatnot, and they'll buy DLC without their parents' permission. So when your parents basically get that check at the end of the month, they'll notice that they spent like $2,000 to $3,000 on video games, and they don't remember giving their kid permission to buy it or not. And so basically, this has brought up a lot of issues when it comes to developers wanting to add microtransaction to games, because people see this as gambling. And even in the Supreme Court, they've been ruling that this is child gambling. And so a lot of games in certain countries have to remove features from the game. Like NBA 2K, for example, they have to remove their entire Ultimate Team because they saw it as child gambling, and they were asking fans to basically stand up and say, hey, this isn't gambling, you all are doing this willingly. But a majority of the players in the world are, they don't care. Because at the end of the day, they agree with the law saying that this is child gambling and that this is wrong. But I'm not saying that all developers do this, of course. There are people like CD Projekt Red, the creators of the Witcher game series. They've sworn that they would never add like microtransactions into their games. Granted, they said that they will have DLC, but they will never add like microtransactions to make the game easier for players, because they feel like every game should be a challenge for you. And I definitely agree with that, because a game is a challenge of like your knowledge, what you know, your map skill, your fighting game tech. It's basically just to see if you can learn and adapt and get better at the game without having to resort to dirty tactics, or, let me rephrase, resort to buying DLC to help you out. Like, for me, personally, I have no problems with DLC. Like, I don't like microtransactions that help players win games, because I see that as unfair to me, because I wouldn't do that in the first place. Like, granted, I would spend microtransactions on cosmetic add-ons. And what that means is basically like, oh, there's a cool costume out. I want to put the money down and buy that cool costume. And that's really it. And so a lot of people agree with that notion more than the idea of pay to win. So most people just, they get annoyed by the whole idea of microtransactions and devs asking the players to basically stand up for them, when we feel like they don't stand up for us as a whole anymore. Because most of the time, whenever something like this happens, the developers throw the players under the bus and they leave us out to dry. So I don't know what they really expect for people to do in these types of situations. People won't really stand up for them because of the idea of, oh, they have money, they can take care of themselves. We already put a couple thousand or a couple $100,000 into the game. They don't need our support anymore. And so that's why you see this relationship between player and developer slowly go down. Because, Randy Pitchford, he's one of the heads for for Borderlands, his relationship with the player fan base has gone down tremendously over the past 5 years because people realize just how much of like a jerk he's been to some of his voice actors and what he thinks about the fan base and the lies that he said to us over the years. And so me personally, I don't care. I see that more as like, oh, okay, he's just a guy that's like, he's just trying to make money. I'm not really mad about that, but he's not going to get my money outside of the $60 of me buying the game itself. Like DLC and all that, I'll probably get it. Like, at this point, gamers need to just realize these developers, they're not going to change at all. They don't really care about our opinions, they just care about our wallets. And so, over time, like, I feel like in the next 2 or 3 years, we're going to see people stop playing Ultimate Team. And the reason why I say that is because Ultimate Team is the biggest finesse in video game history. In Ultimate Team, you have no idea what your card like odds are at all. And apparently it fluctuates based on how much money you've put into the game. And people are starting to look at the data and realize, okay, I have a 2% chance of getting a super rare card out, and I'll probably never see that card ever a day in my life. Yeah, there's no point in me putting money into this. So, unless you're rich, a YouTuber, or a kid with a parent that has a lot of money, I doubt that a lot of players will continue to play games like this. And another thing that really has messed with the relationship is what these developers think about single player games, because we're in the era of online play, and a lot of people still play single player games while devs think that single players are dead. And that's because they see the money that multiplayer makes based on microtransactions, and they feel like, oh, okay, so once they beat the game, they're done, they're gonna just go play online. No, a lot of players go back through and they replay that single player just to find secrets that they didn't know about originally. And so the devs, on the other hand, they see multiplayer as, I don't care. We'll just add it to added. And so sometimes a lot of single player experiences are terrible because the developers don't care anymore. They just care about one feature, and that's that online, because they'll get so much money generated from it. And so gamers really just, like I said earlier, need to realize that most devs don't really care about us anymore. Like, if anything, the indie devs, the people who aren't AAA games, they care more about us than like these major corporations do when it comes to game development, because they never take in consideration about like how the consumer feels. They only care about how much money that game will generate that quarter. And so really, at the end of the day, I would say this to anyone that's new to video games or trying to get into video games. Before you put the money down on those microtransactions, think about it real quick. Is it really something worth it? Like, granted, this game that you're playing, if you're playing a sports game and they come out with another sports game the next year and it's kind of the same, is it really worth it to put down $5 to $20 to upgrade a player or to buy cards if they're going to come out with the exact same game basically the next year? It's not really worth it at all, because it's a cash grab. You can't take that team that you just paid for and move it over to next year's game. You have to rebuy your entire team. There's no point in doing it. But no, seriously. And at the end of the day, I feel like the relationship between player and developer, it has to change in some way or another. Like, I feel like devs like Hideo Kojima, CD Projekt Red, like them, who said that they won't add microtransactions. They'll add DLC, but not actual microtransactions to their games. They should really, we should play more of their games, because they care more about us than these larger corporations that make video games like EA. EA is the biggest offender of microtransactions. They've killed off series dedicated to like single player play, just so they could like revamp their entire multiplayer, and it's still not that great. But thank you for watching this video. If you have anything that you disagree with, you can just tell me. I'll take it under consideration. I'm not one to just shut down anything, like, honestly. But no, thank you so much for watching this, and please have a nice day.